As all One Piece fans knows, Port Gus the Ace played a very vital role in the events at Marineford. The beloved character made a massive impact in what is arguably the most epic battle in the entire One Piece storyline. Unfortunately, it was this battle that led to his death when he sacrificed himself to save his brother. It was a sad moment indeed for the fans, and his death also went on to influence the story. However, let's imagine that Ace didn't die that day and that he survived. How would his presence in the One Piece series affect the show? Would he continue in his pirate career? Even now that the truth about him being the son of the legendary pirate king Goldie Roger has been revealed. Imagine how high the bounty on his head would have been and how many dangerous pirates would be out to kill him knowing his high value. More so, how would this reality affect Luffy's strength? Would he have become as strong as he is now? Remember that Ace's death was the catalyst that motivated Luffy to train harder so he could protect himself and his loved ones. Well, to find out the answers to all of these questions, you'll have to stick around because we are about to get right into how Ace surviving the Marineford War would change the One Piece story and its characters as we know them. First of all, let's imagine that during the fight, Ace doesn't get riled up by Akainu's remark about the Whitebeard. Let's say he escapes with Luffy and the rest of the pirates. Unfortunately, the Whitebeard pirates would later be killed by the Blackbeard pirates, but at least Ace would witness his father's men fight to protect him. However, even after Ace survives this, the Marines would most likely increase his bounty from 550 million to 1 billion belly, making him the first character with such a high bounty in the entire One Piece story. Next, let's consider how Ace's death would affect Luffy. Well, if Ace never dies at Marineford, Luffy wouldn't go into a coma, and this means that Jinbei wouldn't need to drag him out of the battlefield and get attacked by Akainu. Ace's survival also means that Luffy wouldn't have the large X burn mark on his chest. As for the motivation to train harder, although Ace's death was what pushed him, it's fair to say that he would also train in the same way if Ace is still alive, because he would be living with the fear of losing the rest of his crew in battle. He'd still want to protect every man in his crew, so he'd still train under Rayleigh to get prepared for the new world ahead. With Ace alive, Luffy's relationship with some of the characters might be very different. Sure, he'd be grateful to Jinbei for helping him save Ace, but it means that Jinbei would have never helped him pull himself together after the mental breakdown he suffered. Jinbei was the one who helped Luffy recover from the trauma of losing Ace. He became a very important figure in Luffy's life, but if Ace never died, then that would have never happened. Ace's survival would also mean that Garp and Sengoku never retired because they'd want to uphold their reputation after the failed execution by remaining as the leaders of the Navy. This also means that there wouldn't be any battle for their position, meaning that Kuzan and Sagazuki would fight for power. This also means that Fujitora and Ryokugyu wouldn't be drafted into the admiral ranks. At the same time, Isho and Aramaki wouldn't get picked as admirals, and this is something that would have a very telling event later on in the story. We'll get back to that later, but for now, let's talk about Ace. With a huge bounty on his head, since everyone knows that he's the son of the Pirate King, he'd most likely join whatever is left of the Whitebeard pirates and fight in the payback war against the Blackbeard pirates. However, the outcome would most likely be the same because only Ace's influence won't be enough to defeat the powerful Blackbeard pirates. Regardless, his crew would probably do everything in their power to protect him during the battle even though they would lose. Afterward, Ace would realize that he needs to train harder and would probably train alongside Luffy under the Dark King Rayleigh during the time skip. He could also even train with Shanks, who saw Goldie Roger as a father figure. Despite all of this, a move that would ensure that Ace makes his mark in the big events of the One Piece story is going back to the island that the Whitebeards once protected. Ace would most likely return to the island to honor his father and help Luffy defeat the new fishmen in the Fishman Island story arc. With Ace's help, the fight would be a lot easier and Luffy wouldn't lose as much blood as he did, meaning that Jinbei wouldn't need to transfuse some of his blood to save him. This also means that Luffy may never have asked Jinbei to join his crew because it was during that moment that he did. With Ace in the picture this time around, he'd most likely be the one to ask Jinbei to join his crew and offer him the position of first mate as well. Jinbei would be pleased to accept so he can help protect the islands that the Whitebeard once protected, but he would postpone joining it because he's still in the Big Mom's pirate crew at the time. After the battle on the island, Ace would part ways with Luffy and continues his journey to another island while running from the bounty hunters out for his head. Another consequence of Ace's survival would be that Aokiji would still be one of the admirals, and he wouldn't have been wandering around Punk Hazard when Doflamingo attacked Smoker. Also, with Ace still in the picture, the events of Dressrosa would be quite different. There wouldn't be any Meru Meru Nomi fruit as the prize for the competition, so Luffy and Sabo would never have entered and never been reunited there. Since Luffy never enters the contest as Lucy, he would never meet the allies that would later form the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. However, there is a possibility that Luffy and Sabo reunite with each other because Sabo would most likely see Doflamingo's broadcast message revealing Luffy's crew's bounties. Fergus wouldn't also take part in the competition, and that means that he wouldn't sneak onto a revolutionary ship and later gets attacked by the Blackbeard pirates. Following the Marineford War, Sabo would have regained his memory and remembered who he is as a person, which would lead him to a quest to reunite with Luffy. The events of Dressrosa would help him meet with Luffy at least, where he would team up with the Alliance and anyone who's a friend of the Revolutionary Army. Now we are about to find out why the absence of the two new admirals plays a major role in this story. We saw that Fujitora wasted a lot of time before helping Doflamingo because of his beliefs and dislike for the warlords. Let's say the Marines didn't send him. When they find out about Luffy's alliance at Dressrosa, they'd probably send one of the other admirals, and the outcome would be very different depending on who they send. For instance, if Aokiji is the one they send, he'd most likely still hold a grudge against Doflamingo for killing his friend Smoker if he somehow found out. However, even though he doesn't know about that, he'd still be reluctant to help Doflamingo against the Alliance because he is keeping an entire country hostage. If Kizaru was sent, on the other hand, he'd carry out his job and attack Luffy's Alliance, even though in a rather lazy manner. The same goes for Sakazuki, who'd probably blast everyone the moment he arrives and not waste any time like Fujitora did. Sakazuki would have arrived so early that he'd start attacking before hearing the news that Doflamingo leaving the warlords was fake, and so he'd have gone after Doflamingo before going after Luffy and his crew. Let's go back to Luffy and Ace. With Jinbei finally ready to leave Big Mom's crew, he wouldn't join Luffy's crew as he did in the original story. Instead, he'd join Ace's crew. With Ace's new mission to protect islands that the Whitebeard looked over, he'd probably visit his late captain's Sphinx Island, which he'd meet Marco, who'd probably invite Ace to join him to go see Izo. Sure enough, Ace would agree and eventually be reunited with his allies, helping them take down Kaido to fulfill the promise he made to Yamato in the process. He'd also help free Wano, which he promised to Tama, and as a bonus, be reunited with Luffy. After the victory, Ace would reaffirm his promise to recruit Tama into his crew when she's older. He'd also ask Yamato to travel along with him and then proceed to explore the whole of Wano for strong allies to join his crew. With a powerful crew on his side, it's safe to say that Ace has enough influence to shape the entire One Piece story. Now, a formidable force in the series, and with a score to settle, Ace would play a very major role in the final and inevitable battle against the Blackbeard pirates. Well, that's what we think would happen if Ace survived, but did you know that the creator of One Piece created a special 3-chapter series showing what would happen if Ace survived? In that reality, Sabo rescues Ace and Luffy from the Blackbeard pirates, and the three are reunited. But let's imagine that show never came out. What do you think would have happened if Ace survived?